Get ready for 2 hours of hard-hitting football talk, straight from their jocks about the jocks. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
Well, they say it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right. What's going on, everybody? This is a special episode of Football on the Know show. I'm here by myself without Joe, but I'm joined with my friend Eric Hannmann, ESPN Radio. I know him from back in the day, ESPN Radio here at 104.5 The Team, but there he is at the mothership, producer for Freddie and Harry now. So, Eric, pleasure to have you here, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Good to talk to you again. Just you, Jimmy, but no Joe. But no, I'm finally happy that we were able to do this. And yeah, Freddie and Harry, 3 to 7, Sirius XM Channel 80, the ESPN app, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a pleasure working with those two guys. It's been about 3 months now with them. I had worked with Freddie prior, not as much Harry, but it's been a blast the last 3 months, and I'm really looking forward to the future of that show as well.
Yeah,
and I miss Roger, and I will say this: I do miss Roger every once in a while. and the great fans in the capital region.
Nice. That's awesome. Out of everybody at 104.5 The Team, though, you missed Roger, though. Like, forget Levac and guys, those guys, you know.
they're not there anymore. I do miss them.
Yeah, exactly.
They're technically, honestly, I will say this: they're kind of technically my competitor right now because we are on from 4 to 7 locally, which is awesome. Every once in a while, I hear someone will text me and be like, "I heard you on 104.5." So it's kind of cool to kind of be back on ESPN. Or 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio in Albany, in a sense, right? Because we're syndicated through there, so it's kind of a homecoming of sorts in a way.
Yeah, definitely cool, and definitely Freddie knows the area too, you know. So it's a cool link between it all, and it's got to be great for like mentorships, I guess, in a sense there as well. So Levac guys, they're on Fox Sports Radio now, so yeah, they're technically the enemy. Yeah, you guys, but whatever though, you guys get better reception out here. You know, I don't get Fox at all.
Yeah, but the first time, I will say this, like the first time I went to ESPN, so like before I started working here in the same building and everything, the first time I was able to go to the mothership and the campus was with Levac and Goss, and I still look back fondly. It was the first time I actually met Freddie. He was just coming from playing like pickup basketball. I remember it well. Jason Fitz, who I've come to actually become friends with, play in a kickball league with him. Was the first time I had met him. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. It's kind of funny to like blend the two worlds together. It really is a small world at the end of the day. So I'm happy for those guys doing their thing over at Fox Sports. It's great to be talking with you today, Jimmy.
Oh yeah. All right. So we're going to talk football here, and we're going to bring up a little bit of Jets, Giants, and some other stuff out there. Jets last year, first time, healthy with an Aaron Rodgers after, the first 4 plays he was done, but seemed like they had an opportunity to do something. They, were struggling moving early on, and they go out and get Devontae Adams. So you're like, dude, this got to fix everything, right? But they end up firing Robert Saleh, and they have Jeff Ulbrich there, hasn't had a good year at all, with him being interim head coach, and then his son with the whole scandal here with the draft. Yeah. He's had a rough year.
Harry's Falcons.
Yes, the Falcons there. But what do you think really was the issue there? Why they couldn't get things going there with the talent that they had there?
The thing is, you just mentioned it pretty well there with Ulbrich. I think it kind of goes back to the coaching, and not that Saleh was the answer per se. I do think that in hindsight, the way that Woody Johnson kind of went into the season, that it probably he clearly had a very quick leash with head coach Robert Saleh at the time to fire him after 4 or 5 weeks after the London game with Minnesota. The move is kind of like similar to what we just saw with the Knicks, if I can cross the two sports, right? Like they just fired Tom Thibodeau because you don't want to make the move too late. You want to make it earlier than later. The Saleh thing, I can look at that as the same thing, right? You could say, oh, Saleh didn't have Aaron Rodgers. He lost him on the 4th play of the season. They still got to 7-9, obviously, with Zach Wilson as quarterback and a great defense. But I do think that the signs were there that Robert Saleh wasn't the guy to lead this football team. So you fire him 5 weeks into the season, and Jeff Ulbrich just kind of proved it. Look, I think he's a great coordinator. I think he'll do some good things down in Atlanta with their defense. But as a head coach, as the head guy, I do think he was a bit overmatched, right? I think that the coaching in those games, if you look at where some of the games the Jets played after those, you had the Colts game, which was a 1-possession game. The first Dolphins game was a 1-possession game. Back with Saleh, the Broncos game was a 10-9 game where they should have won. There's so many close games that they played throughout the season. It's a Seattle game where they're up 14 points. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers throws that pick six to Leonard Williams,
Mhm.
so he's partly to blame there. But I do think that it was a lot of it was the coaching kind of couldn't win those close games. In the NFL, you really are just a few games away from being in a playoff mix. So like a few coaching mistakes or just kind of the small plays onto the field. So the defense took a step back, which was a big part of it as well. It wasn't the same Robert Saleh defense that we saw when they were 7-9 the previous season. But also too, like you fire him 5 weeks in, it doesn't really help the defense. So it's just a mess upon a mess. But honestly, like I said, I came out of that season. I should have been probably a little bit more upset about it, but I came out of that season kind of wanting to run it back with Aaron Rodgers because I thought he played well in the last 9 weeks of the
Mhm.
season, and there
Yeah.
were so many games that they could have won that they didn't. That if you get the right head man in place, which I think the Jets might have here in Aaron Glenn, then things could be different. But you also have to let him make that decision, and he clearly did not want Aaron Rodgers back.
Right, right. Yeah, and you can see the frustration even on the defensive side of the ball where it seemed like again they were trying to bail out the offense so many times. Sauce Gardner, I don't think I've ever seen him get called for so many penalties last year
Yeah,
with pass interference. It was just frustrated. He was frustrated on it. It's like, what else do I
yeah,
do? Because trying to guard a guy and then I'm getting a whistle every single time. Like what or a flag, you're like, what the hell, dude? Like
yeah,
what do we do anymore, right?
yeah,
Uh
exactly. And
yeah,
the
and you
Jermaine
see
Johnson
that.
injury was pretty big too.
Mhm.
When he went down, obviously you had already lost Bryce Huff in free agency. You had the whole Hassan
Yeah.
Reddick
Yeah.
disaster of a
Yeah.
holdout. When he came back, he wasn't the impact player that they needed him to be. And then so losing that pass rusher, it really changed things not only for the defensive line and pass rush, but obviously for Sauce too, because you have to kind of take more of the slack when your defensive line isn't as good as it was in the previous season.
Right, right. Yeah. And like you said now, Aaron Glenn, I think even partial of that, I think he wanted to set a tone, how he's kind
Mhm.
of almost like a no nonsense dude to where he was like, he wasn't about the whole Aaron Rodgers, hey, he goes on it, Pat McAfee and all this, and I'm waiting for him. He's just like, listen, dude, you showing up or not, because I don't care. I'm doing this with or without you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
setting the tone, this is how I roll. Everybody around us here in the organization, you better know that this is who I am and this is what we're going to do. And it was like that in that press conference too. Like
Hmm.
he was like a no nonsense dude. So they move on from all that. A lot of those guys are all gone. But now you guys have Justin Fields as your quarterback now. So what do you think? The ceiling is for the Jets here and Justin Fields on this one now with Aaron Glenn, defensive minded coach, but then also brought in Tanner Engstrand there from the Detroit Lions as well.
Yeah, so I've been using the word. I was actually just at a baseball game yesterday with one of my friends who's also a Jets fan, and I've been using like the terms cautiously optimistic about it, right?
Mhm.
Because you mentioned Devontae Adams earlier, and he's gone. So to
Mhm.
look at the offense and say that it's gotten better, I don't know if it's gotten better talent wise. Obviously, Membu comes in. Maybe the offensive line can protect the quarterback a little bit better than it has. I do like Mason Taylor from LSU at the tight end position. And then the running backs. I mean, you have like a three-headed
Mhm.
monster in a sense that they could maybe use to their advantage. We saw them kind of like pick and choose who they went to a lot, like
Mhm.
riding the hot hand. We saw Isaiah Davis in there, and the other guys, obviously there's Brees Hall, and then Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
a monster at times last season. Like I
Mhm.
was like, oh shoot, like we really have three running backs that can kind of be like what the Super Bowl Giants were with what Derek Ward, Ahmad Bradshaw, Brandon Jacobs back in the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do have like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I have optimism around that. It's going to be what Justin Fields is going to be able to do in this offense with the guy that came over from the passing coordinator for the Detroit Lions. I've been bullish on him throughout his whole career. Obviously, there's been some highs and lows throughout it. He wasn't 1,000-yard rusher at one point with the Bears. He was four and
Mhm.
two last year with the Steelers, and you kind of like looked at why they made the decision they did, and it was because they wanted to try to utilize George Pickens more downfield, so they felt like Russ
Right.
could do that better. So we
Mhm.
saw flashes of good Justin Fields. So a full season, like I said, I don't want to do it again to myself where I'm thinking
Yep.
this team could be an 8-9 win team and be in the mix for the playoffs. And then by week 8, week 9, I'm like, why did I get so worked up again about this team and so excited about it? But I do think that they're on the right path forward. And I think that Justin Fields is kind of like in that era or that area where like the Jets kind of had this happen to them with a couple quarterbacks, right? Geno Smith
Mhm.
uh, in Seattle, but now in Vegas. Sam Darnold has a great season with the Vikings. That happened right like what 5 or 6 years after they were drafted. Well,
Right.
Justin Fields is kind of in that similar area where he became kind of a backup last year, and now he's going to have the opportunity. Can the Jets have that same quote unquote luck that the Vikings had with Darnold and that the Seahawks had with Geno? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm optimistic, as I said, cautiously.
Yeah, yeah, cautiously, right? Like again, it for me, it kind of looks like, well, this might work again. I think he's got more talent than Zach Wilson did, but he's got the legs and the ability to run and make something out of nothing if they get in some trouble, which I think that's big for them that they can make some plays there. But like you said as well, I mean, you weren't able to get the ball to George Pickens, so I fear that you have Garrett Wilson there. They're like, dude, that's your dude. You gotta be able to get him the ball and
Hmm.
open up that offense down the top. You can't just be running all the time. So that's the one thing that is the knock for Justin Fields. But again,
The
I think
relationship
it's
there,
a
right? Like
bridge there.
that's the
Mhm.
hope, is that the fact that they played in college together and that they have such
Right,
a close relationship that maybe they can unlock something in both of them. And
right.
so we'll see if that is the case.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the running game, like that's one thing I always bring up too. Is like people forget that they have some pretty good dudes back there, Brees Hall too, especially in the backfield, and they have that ability to stay balanced. And if that defense can, do what they normally do, and
Hmm.
now you have an offense who's well, it can't be much worse than what it was like last year. It was really inept at times. You're kind of looking at it, you're kind of like, really, are you serious, man? Like, come on,
Yeah.
do something. And I'm not a Jets fan, but I root for them though. When I'm out there and I'm watching them and stuff like that, and you're looking to see them do well. But yeah, it was rough. But I am a
Hmm.
Giants fan though too, and so it's been a rough decade for me as well, or so.
Yeah. New York
And
football, man.
yeah, exactly. It's rough. Yeah, 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 it definitely does. But the Giants, they go, they keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane here still. Now they're able to go out and draft Abdul Carter in the first round early on, but then they trade back in and get Jackson Dart. And again, after that, everybody's got all this speculation. Why not Shador Sanders and blah, 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 and all this and stuff. But Jackson Dart was their guy from the start. So what do you think about the Giants here going out and drafting those players, which, Carter with that defense too should be amazing to help them out with that pass rush as well. But then you've got Russell Wilson there already, Jameis Wilson too. So Jameis Winston, you've got a decent quarterback room. So now that Jackson Dart can sit behind those guys and potentially be your guy for the future, and you don't have to worry about it right now because I think Russell Wilson's a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Abdul Carter was a no-brainer at number three, right?
Mhm.
If Travis Hunter was there, you're taking him, and if Carter was there, you're taking him, and so it adds to a defense that we saw get in a fight at camp. But that's like you never want to see it get to the
Yeah.
extent where you're kind of running back at guys, and it seems a little bit a little malicious. But
Yeah.
that's like the fight you kind of see from teams that are competitive, that are want to compete out there. So Brian Burns, I think, is a great guy to lead that defense. Kayvon Thibodeau obviously still there too. So there's some excitement for the Giants defense that played a little bit better at times last season. So you add a guy who could possibly be a generational player on that side of the football. Maybe that defense is better than it was. And obviously, like, they had just moved on from defensive coordinator last year, so second year under their new DC. So
Mhm.
you go to the offensive side, drafting Jackson Dart, it makes it interesting, right? Because if you're John Mara, you're not going to have Jackson Dart. Maybe I'm wrong here, because I think you expected it more from the number 2 overall pick in Jaden Daniels, and then the previous year, the number 2 overall pick, CJ Stroud. But you never
Mhm.
know. The 26th overall pick could do something like that if he gets the opportunity. But like, if you're going to let them trade up and get Jackson Dart, like, Dable and Shane, is it more than just 1 or 2 years? And then it goes to the guy that this offense is going to rely upon if he can stay healthy. It's Malik Neighbors. I mean, this guy is incredible. He there's so many videos, and I'm sure you've seen them, Jimmy, because you're a
Yeah.
Giants fan,
Yeah.
online, of Drew Lock getting sacked or Drew Lock looking in the wrong places where Malik is open. Like, this guy is
Mhm.
literally. I know that Reggie Bush used to call Chris Hogan 7-Eleven, but because he
Yep.
was always open. I mean, Malik Neighbors is
Mhm.
basically just like that, because
Mhm.
he has the separation. He knows he's a great route runner as well. He's extremely quick. Like, you have a Jamar Chase type of receiver in Malik Neighbors, which
Yep.
is potentially franchise changing. And we saw it at times last year. I know he had that drop in week 2 against Washington that kind of hurt them. Then got concussed and was out for a little bit. But if you have a guy like that, Russell Wilson's going to have ample opportunities to be able to feed him the ball relentlessly throughout the season. So, and then you have Tyrone Tracy, who had a pretty good rookie
Yeah.
season as well. So there's a
Mhm.
lot to build on with the Giants. The problem is the schedule, right? I mean, look at the
Yeah.
schedule. It's daunting from week 1. You have the Cowboys, who you feel like are getting better. You have the Super Bowl reigning champions in there, and by the way, the team that they beat in the conference championship in the Washington Commanders. So
Yep.
it's the fact that you have such a tough division and a tough schedule to boot that makes me like, okay, what's the realistic amount of wins here? 6 or 7? But there's enough building blocks here that I would, if I was a Giants fan, be excited about. And regardless of how you feel about Dable and Shane, but that's going to be a decision that Mara's going to have to make in season, depending on how things are going. If you're in close enough games, maybe you give them that one more year, even if you only win 5 or 6. But if it's a disaster and there's a lot of blowouts, then I think at some point you're gonna have to be like, all right, I don't think these are the guys that we want running this franchise moving forward. But what do
Right.
you think about Dart? Did you like the pick
Yeah,
at
like I thought
26?
yeah, I do too. Like that's what I thought they're gonna do from the start too. You know, kind of go in, and that's who there was their guy. That's what we were hearing the whole time. That was
Right.
their guy right there. So, so when they moved up, we're like, oh, here we go. And what's funny is Joe and I, the last 2 years, we've been doing a live draft show. So while the draft's going on, we're streaming right now, and so we're finding things going on too, is right at the same time. So we're on Twitter and stuff and seeing the moves that are going down. And we're like, oh, here's the rumors that's gonna happen, and we're like, oh, where you go, Giants are trading the pit, you're trading up, or they're in. I'm like, no, man, here we go. Which quarterback to get? And are they gonna get Dart? We don't know, because we also heard that, and I don't know if this was a rumor or not too, but Dable really wanted Jackson Dart, but then there were, somewhere in ownership that maybe didn't want him Dart. So
Right.
it was a kind of, argument to instead, or who's going to come out on that one and who's going to get their guy. Right. So now we know
Right.
it's Jackson Dart, and I like it again because I think he can be something, but then I like the situation by what they did in the offseason. You get Russell Wilson, and it's not breaking your back like before. Like if you had to get Russell Wilson, I was thinking about him when he left Seattle the first time, you would have had to pay a lot more, and look
Mhm.
what the Broncos did, and they screwed up, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, they
now
might
this
still be
you're better,
paying him.
right? Yeah, right. And now you're in a better situation here, and even you have finger licking Jameis Winston there too in the back pocket. So then say he has even a good offseason or something like that too. Looks pretty good, in preseason. That maybe you just say, hey, you're comfortable with moving on. Hey, somebody want to grab this guy or give the opportunity to go somewhere else and compete, because there's still a couple other teams out there that I'm sure that they're not comfortable with who they have. I
Mhm.
think it's interesting with the Vikings now. They were so quick to move on from Sam Darnold after the 1 year. They weren't
Right.
buying it, even though he was in the house, and that they're all in on saying, all right, JJ McCarthy, here you go. You got the keys to the Ferrari, bro. Now that you're healthy, like, here you go. But I don't know, that's really sketchy too, because I think that's a really
Yeah.
good team, a lot of talent there and everything. And, you don't know what you got with this guy. So, I mean,
Yeah,
a
one
lot of
of our hosts on our network talks about it all the time. That like Jacoby Brissett was that guy for a long time, right? Like where he would be the starter, and then you had a rookie waiting to get in at some point. We saw it last year, literally, right, with
Mhm,
uh, uh, Drake May in New
mhm.
England.
Right.
So now you have 2 of them, right? Because we saw Jameis have
Mhm.
moments last year. We know that deliver me from the pick sixes are going to happen,
Mhm.
but like he can be serviceable if something were to happen to Russ. Like you have 2 options that you
Right.
can rely on to still compete in football games if you don't think Jackson Dart is ready. Uh, if that happens, and then you mentioned the Vikings. That's the ironic part because they had Sam Darnold last year as a potential contingency plan if JJ McCarthy did struggle.
Right.
I can't remember who they brought in to be their backups. I know Daniel Jones obviously is
Daniel
gone and
Jones,
gone
right.
to
Yeah.
Indianapolis. I'm sure they
Mhm.
have someone in place that I'm just forgetting. But it is interesting that, to your point, obviously Darnold would need it to wanted to get paid. But like it is important with these guys that we haven't seen take a single snap in the NFL to have somebody ready. And obviously Russ is favored to be the starter to start the season, not Jackson Dart. But I do like the fact that you have him there to kind of a Super Bowl winning quarterback to at
Mhm.
least mentor him and then obviously start until he is ready.
Yeah, that quarterback room consists of Sam Howell, Brett Rippon, and Max Brosmer.
Okay, so
So
they brought in Sam Howell from
yeah,
Seattle.
Seattle. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, he did show, flashes of, he started a
Hmm.
few different games and looked okay, like even back with Washington. But again, I mean, for a team, I feel like that's right there ready to go. You plug and play quarterback and boom, you're in the playoffs and then see what you can do. Sky's the limit. That you're putting all your chips in here, on JJ McCarthy, who hasn't even made one full start yet in the league. So
Hmm. Goes to show how
who knows?
confident Kevin O'Connell is
Right.
in his offense and who he can maybe have success with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Earlier this year, we had the Hall of Fame players, inductees named. I was, I don't know, upset. Really, I would just say upset, and flabbergasted. I
Yep.
even went to social media and posted out there and voiced my concern that Eli Manning didn't get, inducted in the Hall of Fame. And the fact that he even had such a short list, and he was the only quarterback nominated
Hmm.
this year, and they just said no. And so I think they're going to play this game and wait him out and whether he gets in. But were you shocked that he wasn't, or what's your take on Eli Manning being a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I can't say I was shocked because all of a sudden we moved the goalpost with Eli Manning in a way, right? The
Mhm.
conversations that a lot of people were having at one point was, is Eli Manning even a Hall of Famer? And then the day after, or around that time when that was going to be announced, it was, should he be a first ballot Hall of Famer? And so we
Mhm.
have a screening room in radio where, like, we may cut highlights or sound for shows, so we kind of just hang out in there with a lot of the different employees that I work with, my coworkers, and that conversation had come up a few times. And there's a lot of people that really feel like there has to be a standard of who is a first ballot, right? Who's
Mhm.
getting in first? Because is Eli Manning on the same level as his brother Peyton Manning if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer? And you have people that say no, he's not. He shouldn't be a first ballot. So I wasn't shocked, but for me, and I don't have that in my barometer, right? I'm voting. Selecting a guy based on whether I think he's a Hall of Famer or not, and I think
Right.
Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer. So if that was me
Mhm.
voting, I'm not saying, oh, he's not deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer, because to me, it's just, is he a Hall of Famer? Yes or no? That's what I'm voting on. And so I do think that some of the voters also take that into consideration. And I think that he gets a bad rap in a way in terms of his
Mhm.
regular season quarterback, because he was like a definitely top 10 in I would say 10 seasons in certain categories. Like I
Yeah.
definitely went when that was conversation was happening, I was looking at things and I'm like, you know what? He gets a bad rap probably because of what the record ended up being. Because he
Right.
was in those last 3 years where they were starting to go on the downslide, and he ended up being 500 in the regular season. But
Mhm.
when the lights shine brightest, Eli Manning was awesome, and he won 2 Super Bowls against, and one of them was against the best team possibly ever assembled in the NFL. So to
Right.
me, it was a no-brainer to vote him in as the Hall of Famer. But I wasn't ultimately shocked that it wasn't first ballot. I know he's going to get in eventually. So I guess he'll just, and he probably doesn't seem to mind because he's doing the Manning cast. He's
Yeah.
got Omaha Productions with his brother. He's having a
Yep.
great time on commercials. So he'll be all right. But I was definitely not shocked that
Not
I would have
shocked
had him
or
in there.
yeah, and I guess that's what it is, even to that stigma that hey, he's a Hall of Famer. I guess he fits the criteria, but you can't be, there's that special room in Canton, even the first ballot Hall of Famers. He's not one
Yeah,
of those. He can't be with those guys, which
right.
I
Like
can
Drew Brees
understand that
might get
too.
in as a first ballot next year.
Right.
And there's certain people, even though that Brees has one less Super Bowl, and I would ultimately say I do think Drew Brees is a better all-time quarterback
hmm
than Eli Manning. That,
hmm
like, oh, Drew Brees should be first ballot, but Eli is not on that same level, so therefore he shouldn't be also first ballot. Like that's just the type
Right.
of
Right.
thinking
Right.
that,
Right.
and that's the human element. The guy, Joe Fortenbaugh, who I used to work with on Carlin versus Joe, he now
Yep.
hosts Joe and Q 12 to 3 on ESPN Radio,
Yep.
and obviously ESPN Bet as well. He always brings up the human element when he looking at his wagers for different awards, because that's what it ultimately comes down to. The people voting for these awards are humans. We haven't gone to AI yet when it comes
Yep.
to picking award winners or Hall of Fame votes. So
Right.
that's just the natural human psyche, is to kind of think, oh well, he's a Hall of Famer, but he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Okay,
Right.
all right. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. I would have voted for him. on that
Yep.
first ballot because I believe he's a Hall of Famer.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength you are, but I understand Joe too as well. And yeah, I agree with a lot of stuff he says too as well. So, and it makes sense. I just look at it too as the next couple of years, you're adding guys like Drew Brees, and it'll be Tom
Yeah.
Brady and stuff like that too. So I feel like that's even going to be harder because then they're like, oh, do we put this many quarterbacks in this year? Oh, because he's going to keep getting overshadowed by these other guys. So he's
Yep.
going to get put off, and then they're like his last year of eligibility, they're like, all right, here we go.
All right,
Now you're
finally,
ready.
here he is. All right.
Yep, definitely. So
We made you wait long enough. Well,
yeah,
that just goes back to the human element again,
Yep.
right? Like, oh, we can't have too many quarterbacks. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, also one of the things that Joe and I were talking about, which our video really went crazy with, because it all stemmed from a friend of mine talking about Jalen Hurts, and I think across of maybe even some guys here at ESPN Radio and some other analysts and Fox and things have said Jalen
Mhm.
Hurts now after you've gone to the Super Bowl multiple times. You've won the Super Bowl now this past year. You're cool, calm, and collect, and I get that, and I really like Jalen Hurts. But some people are naming him top 5 quarterback in the league right now, and I disagree. And Joe and I put out our own top 5s, and he wasn't on there. But what do you feel about Jalen Hurts and his placement in the top 5 quarterback range, or where do you see him?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have him in my top 5 either. I think he's borderline top 10. I think what we've seen from him in that playoff run was he made the plays that he needed to make. And
Mm-hmm.
when you bring in Saquon Barkley and you can rely on that run game, it really benefits Jalen Hurts a lot because he also can run the football himself. So he
Yeah.
made all of the right plays. So it's one of those things where you're going to have either people who want to go that extra route and be like, here, see, he won a Super Bowl. It proves that he's a top 5 quarterback. To me, like there's been moments the last 2 years since he was in the MVP discussions when he had that really good breakout year. The first year they made the Super Bowl and lost it. Um, that like he's had games where he just disappears, right? Like we've kind of see to go another cross sport comparison. It's kind of the same conversation that we're having with Tyrese Halliburton, whether he's a superstar or not,
Right.
because he has those great moments. He has 4 game-winning shots, one in each series so far, but there's certain games where he's just not impacting the game the way that you would want a superstar player to impact the game. I kind of look at it as Jalen Hurts. There's certain games where he kind of doesn't get to that point where he's winning the game for you like you would want him to. We've seen that too many times over the last couple of years. But when push came to shove in the playoffs, I felt like he made the right decisions that he needed to make. If he needed to run for a first down, he would do it. If he needed to make a good throw, I really have no qualms of what he did, but it was also a really well built roster. So I would still probably have, obviously Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like that's just 4 in the AFC. He's probably that's the thing about the NFC though,
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy, is
Yep.
that like he might be the best quarterback in the NFC. I mean,
Right.
there's the amount of quarterbacks that are great in the NFC right now aren't at the level of the AFC. But I guess I should probably come up with a 5th one
That's
to
where
to
it always
to,
is,
to,
right?
to
Because that's
officially,
your
yeah.
debate, right? Because that's what everybody kind of debates. Like Joe and I, when we were talking about it, and this is where you talk about the human element too, right? When you're looking at this, you can easily be like, oh, well, this guy, was MVP. This guy was this, blah, blah, blah. And I see this, Mahomes, he's won this many championships here. A lot of people look at wins, and this is what
Hmm.
people had said about Jalen Hurts. Oh, he's a winner though, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, winning is a team thing. And that team, even the Eagles, are stacked. And I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts sucks or anything. He's terrible. He's good. I even like him. I root for the guy, and I shouldn't because I'm a Giants fan. I hate the Eagles, but I
Right.
see talent and I see guys, and I'm like, well, he's got something there. Back when he was with Doug Peterson would bench him in certain moments and then bring him out. Like even that one time they wanted to lose on purpose so that the
Oh yeah.
Giants didn't make it, right? And you're
Yep.
kind of like, dude, what are you doing with this guy, right? But he's had his moments that he looks really good and really bad. And like I said, I like his demeanor to where he's just seems cool, calm, collected. The moment is never really too big, and you see it in the Super Bowl too. Meanwhile, you've seen Cam Newton, some other guys too. They look like they're snapping under pressure in the Super Bowl. Even Brock
Right.
Purdy, that really, that last Super Bowl of Brock Purdy, that changed my view on Brock Purdy completely, because I thought he was pretty good here too. But when the chips were down, he couldn't do it. So when you look
And that's
at
the
the
thing about
NFC, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing about Jalen Hurts. To your point about his demeanor, is like he really doesn't listen to the outside noise either. It's like these conversations are going to get to him, are like going to make it their way to him at some point, or someone might just say, "Hey, did you see this? Did you see that?" He might not be able to avoid it on social media, but he doesn't really seem to care about those, which is very important. If I was an Eagles fan, I would like that a lot. Obviously, a lot of Eagles fans are the ones saying he's a top five quarterback,
Yeah,
but
yeah. You're putting him in that spot.
yeah, exactly. But and kind of forcing these conversations. But I mean, it's hard, right? Because if you look at a guy like, let's say, Justin Herbert, some people might want to say he's a top 10 quarterback, but then when the playoff game happened last year, he threw 5 interceptions. So when you're going to juxtapose that to a guy who just won a Super Bowl, then yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts is going to be ahead of Justin Herbert. Same thing with what you just said about Brock Purdy. Tua hasn't had postseason success. Dak Prescott, same thing. So I think that a lot of people will use that postseason success, which is very important, kind of like to supersede a guy who you look at when we talked about those four we just mentioned: Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar. Like, you know that they're going to impact games at a different level, like eons above than what we've seen Jalen Hurts do in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, yeah.
Even
And
Jaden Daniels is kind of on that for me. It's just I wouldn't like I would possibly choose Jaden Daniels as my number 5 quarterback in the NFL right now and the best in the NFC. It's just we need to see it happen again this season,
yeah,
because we saw what happened with CJ Stroud in year 2 with Houston.
right. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, one year is 1 year. You want to see more of this. Like you
Right.
said, CJ Stroud, perfect example. And I think it's funny too that, again, within that conversation, you didn't bring up 2 guys that I think are definitely in the conversation. They were both on. One was on Joe's list. It wasn't on mine, but we both had Jared Goff in our top 5. But then Joe also had Baker Mayfield. And if you look at the year Baker Mayfield had
Yeah.
last year, 4,500 yards plus like 41 touchdowns, I think, too, with like maybe 9 interceptions. I can't remember, but something like that. The ratio with injured wide receivers, didn't even have Mike Evans the whole year. Didn't have Chris Godwin. You know what I mean? It's doing it,
Yeah.
balling all by himself.
Yeah, Baker deserves probably more consideration. I think that there's like, at least with me, kind of that memory of Cleveland and the fact that he went to the Rams and then cut and then the Panthers, or whatever order that was.
Right,
with
right.
Baker, because like but he had a phenomenal season last year. So I would say it's kind of like a similar feeling for me with Jaden, where it's kind of like, let me see you do it at that level again, especially after losing Liam Cohen to Jacksonville. But I would say he's definitely in that conversation. Jared Goff, kind of like back to what we were just saying moments ago. What are you doing in the playoffs, right? Like, the lack of playoff success. I know we saw him get to a Super Bowl with the Rams, didn't necessarily play the best game against a good Patriots defense, but I think it's kind of like, oh, look what he has, right? He's got the Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield, and David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, who are awesome. And then, by the way, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams. Like, he has a great supporting cast, and the hottest commodity in football from a coaching perspective this past offseason, and Ben Johnson. Like, now with the new offensive coordinator, so for me, I think I got kind of caught up in that with Jared Goff, which is the opposite of the Jalen Hurts thing, which is right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, when the moment was the brightest, and then you have that 5 interception game in the regular season against Houston. That's just like, there's always going to be that thing that takes away from me. Like, I'm like close and I'm close and I'm close, and then that 5 interception game happens. I'm close and close and close again with Jared Goff getting up there, and then they lose to the Commanders in the playoffs. So yeah, I think those guys deserve to be in the conversation, but I'm kind of talking myself into, like I said, I probably would put Jaden Daniels 5, but it's kind of hard to say that confidently when he's only played 1 year in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it was funny, is like you even say you can honestly have the top 4 guys in the AFC, to where the NFC, you're looking to put somebody there, right? I was like, or is it going to be all AFC, right? Just because. And because again, when you look at them, you've got the top of the top here, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar and Allen right there. So, I mean, there's 4 right there if you want to put them in those, whatever order you want there. So it is tough. And that's why it's interesting that even despite it all, after the fact, an NFC team was still able to, beat the Chiefs and win. But with the Chiefs, like I bring this up too with some people too when they talk about it, and even though because they want to say, hey, Mahomes and Andy Reid, they're gonna win this, that, blah blah blah. But they're good, and I think their record last year, with it being 15-2 or whatever, was kind of you see the number on the paper, but when you're watching the team, you're like, man, they just barely got out of that game somehow, and they just don't look really good still, even though they are still kind of able to win. And when I look at that team, especially, and then you kind of look at a team that's good, but you see how good they were when they had even better weapons. Like once they lost Tyreek Hill, yes, they were still able to win, and they're still able to win a championship, but they weren't demolishing teams like they did before. And that's a difference, I think, with some other teams, to where you're looking at when we were judging quarterbacks, how, this guy wins, this guy does that, but what talent does he have around him? That is a big factor even for a lot of other quarterbacks, especially if they're still learning and trying to develop. And that's why I think that you saw me, like when you look at some of those guys, that's a real major difference. Like Mahomes is still good, but he's not Mahomes of before, but because he doesn't have as much talent as he did before.
Right. That's a good point. And obviously Rashee Rice getting hurt was a big thing. Travis Kelce's kind of in his swan song years, so he's not the same target that he was. Hopkins was good, but he wasn't the same DeAndre Hopkins when he came in. So yeah, obviously we saw his numbers dip a little bit, but then he still wins, so he's still going to be in that conversation because we've seen him win, 3 Super Bowls already. But yeah, that's a huge part of it, right? Because a lot of people will look at Joe Burrow and say, well, of course he's as good as he is because he's got Jamar Chase and T Higgins to throw to. But also too, like he didn't have T Higgins for a fair amount of games this season. Jamar ended his holdout, and we saw them lose in week 1, which might actually have been a big reason. It was a big reason. That probably was the reason they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, make 12s.
But at the end of the day, like we see Joe Burrow make throws, like really awesome throws, and come up clutch in a lot of games. But you can't get away from that though, because Jamar Chase is, and T Higgins are 2 really good wide receivers. It's just the context of those conversations are always going to have that in there. What happens if you switch Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, who knows? Maybe so. But the other part of it too is, would you rather have been Joe Burrow this season, have those numbers that he had, and not make the playoffs, or Patrick Mahomes, more of a subdued season compared to what we expect from him, but make the Super Bowl, right? And at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal for all these guys, is to make and win Super Bowls.
Right, exactly, and that's what most people would trade off. Like, hey, would you rather have an MVP year, or would you rather win the chip? You know what I mean? Most guys would be like, yeah, I'd rather just win the Super Bowl.
Right?
Which I think is kind of funny too, because when we were having these conversations, Joe and I too, you're looking at guys, you're looking at their stats, with your eye test, your emotion. You kind of look at Josh Allen and how almost people were talking like he was the shoe-in to win the MVP, but there were so many other guys like Joe Burrow, especially, like, yes, he's coming off an injury, but the numbers he put up too, I think, were like lights out. Like I can't believe that he didn't even get it here, because you look at Josh Allen, it wasn't even his best year, I don't think.
Yeah, it just has to do with the fact that one team was at the top of their division in the playoffs, and Joe Burrow, lost to the Patriots in week 1 and just couldn't get over the hump at the end there to make the playoffs. I think it would have been interesting had Kansas City maybe played and beaten the Broncos. What would have happened if they end up making the playoffs, right? That would have been extremely interesting to see how that would have changed the voting, because I do think a lot of people just didn't vote for Burrow because, well, his team didn't make the playoffs. How valuable could he be? The way back to the human element of things. But yeah, John, I mean, I think if you really do look at it, it kind of reminds me of what we saw this year, once again, across the sports, like with Jokic. Jokic might have had his best season of his entire career, but they still gave it to SGA because he had the best team I mean, they won 68 games, but also
Mhm.
too, like he hadn't won it yet. We saw Jokic win the three
Yeah,
out of the last four. Josh
right.
Allen, we've seen Lamar Jackson win a couple, but Lamar might have had his best season we've ever seen him play last year.
Exactly, right?
And somehow, because the Bills were just a little bit better, and Josh Allen hasn't won it yet. All right, this was Josh Allen's year, right? It was when Leo won his uh, Best Actor award. Might
Right,
not have been
yeah,
his
right.
best performance, but he hasn't won one yet.
Yep,
All right, Leo,
right.
Leo finally gets his Best Actor
Yeah.
Oscar. You know?
Yep, and I'm glad you say that. It's the same point of view I was having. I'm like, that's just what it is. I think it's like, oh, it's his turn now to get it. This is where they are. Lamar's already had it a couple times. Again, he could have been a three-peat right here, right?
Yep.
But it's crazy. You guys out there, make sure you guys subscribe to the show. It's real easy to do. We have a QR code. I make it so easy for you. Just scan it right there with your phone. Subscribe to the show. We're moving on. We're getting a bunch of new subscribers daily too, so that helps us with the algorithm and everything else too. We appreciate it. We're here talking with Eric Hannmann, ESPN Radio, producer of the Freddie and Harry show. I get to listen to you on my afternoons on the way home from work, so I really love checking it out.
It's
And
awesome.
and what I like too, that's a little off too. And I know sometimes it's maybe just because there's not a whole lot going on in the sports world at some days and stuff like that. But you guys start doing these, what's your best sandwich of this or what's that and
Yeah.
that, rate this and rate that. And
Selection committee. Yep.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's funny because again, what better stuff, and this is funny where it tunes into humanity, I think, and people and human beings, right? You could talk about sports and have a feeling towards a sport and this and that, but it's really just everybody has opinion about everything, because you can seriously debate, is a hot dog a sandwich or something like that with people till like,
Oh,
you know
that
what I
has
mean?
been a debate on radio for sure, or
Right,
on
right.
the morning show. I'm pretty sure they had that debate on Sportsman. Like,
Right. Yeah, and like seriously, people have a strong opinion about it, and they'll keep going. So I think it's hilarious how that stuff goes. But I'm gonna bring up one thing that I saw on X. Now I keep calling it Twitter, but on X, your struggle meals list, right? You got the
yes,
the basics, right? You got your basics. You got your ramen, your mac and cheese, Pop Tarts, PB&J, grilled cheese, but then you got a baked potato. Like, I don't know, like about me or you guys, but for me, I'm like, if I'm struggling, all those are on my list, but it seems like to make a baked potato, I ain't wasting all my time there. I'm just eating like a bowl of cereal, some crap too, especially if I ain't got the money, you know what I mean? So I'm struggling. I don't have baked potato stuff, because again, if I'm doing a baked potato, I think even the picture that you guys have, it has the sour cream and
the
everything and stuff, like
picture
you're not getting that, right?
the picture didn't really do what we were literally getting at there. For me, I mean, like, look, for baked potato is like you buy a sack of potatoes, you put it in the microwave for 10 minutes, put some butter on it. That's the struggle meal. That's what I was going for, because I
Oh,
actually was
yeah.
the one that I suggested.
Oh,
You
great.
bring up the bowl of cereal. The way that it works is kind of funny. You have to kind of be strategic with it, because you could bring up bowl of cereal as your number two, right? Like Harry could say
Yeah.
bowl of cereal is number two, and then Christine Lisi, our Sports Center anchor and tiebreaker, she could pick someone else's, or someone else agrees, and that's number two. In order for like us, like, so for you to get back on the list, you have to suggest it again. And so I think
Mhm.
cereal got beat out by one of the others, and no one redid it. But definitely cereal probably should have been on there over baked potato. But I kind of got one on the list, so I'm not complaining. Whenever
Yeah.
anytime I can get one on the top six, it's a good day
Nice.
for me.
Nice. So out of that one, do we have a winner for that one? Who ended up winning that thing?
We don't usually like keep like
Keep
count
score,
how
I guess.
many
I know
a
she picks
score
like
of like
a winner, don't she? Like a tiebreaker if
she
there is or
so
something?
like she'll only do a tiebreaker if we can't agree on it, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes Freddie and I, or Shannon and Harry, or the combination of us, maybe all four of us, will just agree that this is number one, and therefore, boom, it all it takes is two, unless it's 2-2, in which case
Mhm.
Christine would have to break that tie again. But if it's 2-1 or 2-1-1, 3-1, that wins. And so, like, that would be like three people having the same one. So like, we don't necessarily keep score, but it also feels good to get yours on the list for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So I've got one more thing before we head up out of here.
Sounds
I
good.
know you're working with Freddie and stuff. He's from the Cap region too. He used to live here. I'm sure that if he had a chance, or you even had a conversation with him, said, Hey man, yeah, you're back in town. What's the one thing you're doing, or what's the one place you got to stop at, a certain food or something like that? Now, if you're back here in the Cap region too, what do you think, man? What is there something here that like, oh man, I gotta go hit this place up again because I haven't had something like that in a while, or I want to go here, or what? What do you got?
So definitely, I come back every year to go with Roger actually to the Traverse Stakes at Saratoga. So Saratoga was like something that Harry's been to the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, went to school in Louisville
Yep.
for the Cardinals. So we were talking about how he used to go to the Derby all the time. He didn't go this past year. But we were like, we got to get to Saratoga and do a live show from
Yeah.
Saratoga for one of the weekends, maybe one of the days of the
Belmont's been
week.
there the last couple.
That's true too.
Mhm.
And so definitely the track is always something I try to get to in the summer. And every time I come to visit my parents, which I like a good steak. And so it's a Black and Blue Steakhouse. We'll go there for like a special occasion. I think we went there for Mother's Day. That's a great place to go. And then I'm trying to think of there was this brewery in Albany. I used to go to Beer Garden a lot for
Yep.
sure. But
Yep.
I went to a brewery. I forget what it's called actually. That's with my buddy that
Mhm.
who lives in Schenectady, and that's a good time. So honestly, it's catching up with friends, catching up with people that I still have relationships with, whether it's people I worked with at 104.5 the team or people who I worked with at News Channel 13 when I was a production assistant there. So it's more about seeing the people, but obviously too, there's some good restaurants and some good places to hang out and do some things.
Excellent, excellent, definitely. So I hope to see you when you come back here for the Travers. Then,
Yeah,
and
man, hit me up.
yeah, one more time, just plug the show again. Freddie and Harry. I always do it again. I have a lot of fun. It's funny to hear the different conversations with you guys at different points of view. Harry
For
cracks me
sure.
up a lot too,
He's so
especially. But
funny. Yeah, Freddie and Harry is on 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. nationally, Eastern time. Locally in the area, it's on from 4 to 7, I believe,
right,
on 104.5 the team. But you can get us anywhere on the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Tune in. Just tell your smart speaker to play ESPN Radio. And then I'm on Twitter at the Eric Hannamann. So exactly the word the, and then the Chiron that Jimmy kindly has on the screen of me, Eric
Mhm.
Hannamann, spelled exactly like that. If you want to
Boom.
see some of my thoughts and things like that, or want to ask any questions, um, I occasionally do a podcast giving my thoughts on some UFC picks and combat
Nice.
sports. I've recently done a show I used to do, Sitting Sportside Sunday on 104.5 the team. Brought back Sitting Sportside podcast with my buddy Mike James that we do every once in a while. So that's where to
Nice.
find it if we do drop an episode. So I appreciate you having me, Jimmy, and letting me plug those things.
Awesome. No problem. Yeah, this has been a long time coming, man. We've been trying to get this together. It's
Yeah.
nuts, but it finally happened. I'm so glad that it did. And I hope to talk to you again. See you sometime soon, the Travers, or if not during the upcoming football season, man.
Sounds good, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
See ya.